So, today, talking about the Fuji Klasse-S, I think it's Klasse. It could be class, it could be classy. Not exactly sure how to pronounce it, and there isn't any information on the pronunciation of the body, but anyway, it is one of those sort of point-and-shoot, high-end point-and-shoot cameras from 2007, 2010, or thereabouts. Pioneered, I guess, by the Nikon 35 Ti, and Leica, of course, made some point-and-shoots as well, one of which I have. And it's a quite, you know, at first glance, it's sort of an unremarkable camera. Has a 38mm f2.8 lens. This is the S version. The W version is a wide angle, which I think had a 21 or a 24 or something like that. Anyway, but in all sort of Fuji wonderment, it is actually a whole lot more interesting than one might think. Well, working your way through it, first of all, it has one of those little motors in it that every I think the same motor is used in every single point-and-shoot camera sort of ever. Both the motor to advance and rewind the film and the one to power it up and bring the lens forward. So it sounds familiar and not in a good way when you fire it up. But it's, you know, you can drop a roll of film into it, DX coded, but you can, through the controls, set any ISO you want. It has aperture priority starting with program and going through 2.8, 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, and 16, which is kind of nice. And then it just matches the shutter speed to that. I don't think there's a manual shutter option on it, so it's just aperture priority. And it has a couple of stops of exposure compensation in front, 2 stops up and 2 stops down, which is kind of nice. And it's, you know, it's really actually kind of interesting because, you know, when you look through the viewfinder, you don't really, you know, it looks like an old point-and-shoot viewfinder, which these days is a bit of a throwback and not a welcome one. It's hard to tell. There's a few lines in there for parallax correction, I think, but I don't really know exactly what they're for except to confuse me. But regardless, it's actually kind of, you know, it's interesting when you shoot with it because you set it to P or 2.8 or 4 or 5.6 or whatever, and then you take your photo, and it's sort of a bit underwhelming when you shoot with it because you just get a little tiny click and then a little whir of the motor advancing the film, and that's kind of it. But under the hood, there's actually some really interesting options. You've got, let me think here, going through here. First of all, when you focus, if you put it on P, this is really cool. When you focus, it will give you your f-stop and your focus distance in the LCD at the top. I just figured that out recently. Scrolling through the button, you've got an auto exposure. You can do AE bracket, 1 stop or half a stop, back and forth, which is actually really cool. You can set your AF or set it to shoot AF, or you can actually, it's a bit of a kludge, but you can actually go to a manual focus option, and you can then scroll in where you would like the camera to focus to. Which is kind of clever, but not really that useful. But also there's a bulb function where you can have no flash, or you can have the flash. 1 second, 2 second, 4, 8, 15, 30, and 60 second exposures, which is really cool. You've got self-timer, of course, auto ISO, or you can set your ISO. And it also has one of those handy-dandy things where you can set the date, which I guess will stamp on the bottom corner of the frame and make it feel like you're truly from 2004. And as I've just found out recently, scanning stuff in, the image quality is horrifyingly good out of such a little tiny camera and little tiny lens. I shot a couple rolls and found that it was really nice, like really, really nice. Nice exposures, a bit overexposed, but not too bad. And it's actually surprisingly good. I mean, this is the typical thing with Fuji's, is that their metering has always been, at least in my mind anyway, has always been really great, like really great, like hard to fool the camera. I mean, I suppose if I was shooting on snow or something like that, I'm sure you can definitely get it to do what to make mistakes. But every frame, pretty much every frame I shot in 2 rolls of film looked surprisingly good, well exposed, in focus, nice and sharp, and it was just sort of, I don't know, what can I say? It was. It's really nice, and it is actually, you can actually, well, with that little handle on the bottom, which are actually very handy, you can tuck that in your pocket no problem. And it is, it's a bit, you know, it's a bit of a Q ship, you know, it's sort of, it's totally flies under the radar. Nobody even notices you've got a really, really nice 35mm point and shoot camera. But the other thing about this camera is that I hadn't even heard of it until a friend of mine pointed it out to me, and in fact, actually, this is his camera. And it seems to have received zero attention in North America, or certainly in Canada anyway. And there's not a ton of information on the internet about it, but it is, you know, don't let it, looks can be deceiving, don't let it fool you. It feels kind of plasticky, but when you actually look at it carefully, you can see it's actually a metal chassis. The rails are metal in the, you know, in the back of the camera, and it's you know, it's pretty heavy duty. It's not, you know, I don't know if it's not quite Leica quality, but then of course that's not what they were going for anyway. And it's anyway, it has been surprisingly fun to shoot with, and I'm looking forward to putting through a few more rolls, and actually looking forward to putting through some. Oh, there you go. There's the noise as it tries to figure out what it's doing. Is there? And it actually knows if you don't put roll of film into it, which is nice too. Anyway, there it is. Handy little camera. Okay, so, but one of the things about this camera that it's always like sort of the acid test of any kind of a camera, especially a point and shoot like this, is how does it work with a roll of slide film? Because that's one of the more unforgiving films kind of ever. And so I've got a roll of Aquachrome in the freezer, I think. And I think we're going to load it up and try it out. That. It's a little frozen. You're not supposed to put frozen film in cameras, but that's all right. Just like that. There we go, ready to go. Perfect.
I was going to say if it just tilted towards the camera.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Cool.